Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking with Charlie Baker, a Republican candidate running for governor of Massachusetts. We are focused on politics with the upcoming primary election on September 9th. Among the races that will have a contested primary is the governor's race. There are 2 Republicans and 3 Democrats on the primary ballot. The primary will determine which of them will appear on the general election ballot in November. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Laura. Happy to be here.
Let's start with some background. Many voters are already familiar with your story because of past races, but for those who are not, introduce yourself to the voters.
Well, Laura, I'm a Massachusetts kid. I grew up in Needham. I consider myself to be the product of what I call a mixed marriage. My mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican. I grew up listening to them debate the issues of the day across the dining room table, and sometimes I thought my mom was right, sometimes I thought my dad was right, but the one thing I took from the whole thing was it was good to hear more than one point of view, and because they thought it was important, I thought it was important, and I always knew I'd spend some time in the public sector. I ended up working in the cabinet of Bill Weld and Paul Cellucci, first as Secretary of Health and Human Services, and then as Secretary of Administration and Finance in the 1990s. I left there after 8 years to become the CEO of Harvard Vanguard Medical Associates, which was a big physicians group associated with Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, the big health plan. When Harvard Pilgrim got into trouble, I kind of got a battlefield promotion to run the plan, and with a lot of luck and a great team, we took it out of receivership, and for the last 7 years I was there, it was the number 1 ranked plan in the country for customer service and member satisfaction, according to U.S. News and World Report, which I was very proud of. It was a great team effort. I left Harvard Pilgrim in 2009 to run for governor against Governor Patrick and Treasurer Cahill. Came up short in that race, but learned a lot. And one of the things I learned was how much I liked the people I met along the way during the course of that campaign. I spent the last 3 years working with a venture capital firm, General Catalyst, which is located in Cambridge. I was an executive in residence, which means that I worked with them on healthcare stuff, and I'm currently on leave from there as I campaign for governor. I got into this race in the fall, and the 3 big issues I've been focused on are what can we do to improve our economy, especially outside Route 128? What can we do to make sure all our schools in Massachusetts can deliver for the kids of Massachusetts? And what can we do to make sure every community in Massachusetts is a great place to grow up and raise a family?
Well, you touched on my next question, which was what issues are you focusing on? And I guess we could take those one by one. Why don't we start with the economy? Because I know in the Weld-Cellucci administration you worked on creating jobs. If you're elected governor, what would you do to help boost the local economy?
Well, the great thing about having worked in the Weld administration is I was part of a team that managed to create 500,000 net new jobs in Massachusetts over that 10-year period of time from 1991 to 2000. Our unemployment rate actually went from the highest in the country to the lowest in the country over that period. And a lot of what we did was reasonably, I think, sort of the smart kind of competitive things you want to do. We kept taxes low, we controlled spending, we made key investments in education, and most of our economic policy was built around what worked in different regions of Massachusetts, because what works in Greater Boston is not necessarily going to be the same thing that's going to work on the Cape or work in the South Coast or work in Western Mass. And so I happen to think that's the right way to do this. I'm a big fan of trying to make sure we can be responsive to what the needs and requirements and expectations are in different parts of the state. But I think the big thing we have to do is make sure that from taxes and regulations and permits and licensing and how fast it takes to get stuff done, we need to be competitive with other states. I think there are a lot of other states out there that just have the ability to get stuff done much more quickly than we do. And as I've said before, and I say this as somebody who spent a lot of time in the public sector. If there's a complicated way to do something that takes a long time, Massachusetts will find it. We need to get better about that and start doing things in simpler and sort of clearer ways, and we need to get them done more quickly. Time is money in the private sector, and a lot of people can't afford to put up with a lot of the stuff we put them through when they're trying to grow a business.
Now, you mentioned taxes. Of course, that's a focus for a lot of voters. Lay out your plans for any changes you might make to state taxes.
Well, I have three big changes. First of all, I'm not going to raise taxes, and I've said that since I got into the race. 5 tax increases in 7 years is plenty. At this point in time, Massachusetts should be able to live without having to go back to the taxpayers anymore. I also, by the way, oppose the automatic indexing of the gas tax, which is going to be question 1 on the fall ballot. People will have the ability to vote against an automatic increase in the gas tax every year by voting yes on question 1. I plan to vote yes. I also think we should create what I've called small business tax credits for small businesses so that they can manage the... I did support the increase in the minimum wage, but I wanted to see it tied to small business tax credits so that small businesses would be able to afford the increase in the minimum wage without having to reduce hours or lay workers off. That continues to be my position. I also think if you run a small business and you generate less than $500,000 in revenue, you shouldn't pay taxes on that in Massachusetts, certainly not corporate income taxes. We want to give small businesses the ability to reinvest in their companies, reinvest in their people, and continue to grow here in Massachusetts.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're focused on politics with the upcoming primary election on September 9th. I'm talking with Charlie Baker, who is running for governor in the Republican primary. Now, as former CEO of Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, you know a lot about the subject of healthcare, obviously. What are your feelings about the system we have in place in the Commonwealth, and can it be improved?
I think that I talked a lot about healthcare over the course of this campaign, and I have sort of 3 big issues that I would like, as governor, I would pursue. The first is, I think the prices that people pay in healthcare for services, the prices that providers charge, the prices that they get paid, that should be publicly available information. Currently it's not, and what happens as a result of that is the same service provided to the same person with the same outcome at 2 or 3 different provider organizations can vary in price by, 2 or 3 or 400%. And if something, if an MRI costs $500 at one place and $1,500 somewhere else that's nearby, I think the people who can do it for $500 should be allowed to talk about that, and the people that do it for $1,500 should have to justify why they're so much more expensive. There have been a number of studies done, Laura, that show that the single biggest thing that drives up the cost of health care in Massachusetts is the enormous differences between and among provider organizations on the price piece for the same service. And I would like to see all of that stuff posted online. I'd like to see all of it publicly available. Second thing I think we need to do is we need to invest in primary care. At exactly the time when the population is aging and people are dealing with more and more chronic illnesses and chronic conditions, that's when they really need quarterbacks to help them work their way through the healthcare system. We've been underinvesting in primary care for years. I think it's a huge part of how we not only make the system more effective, but also more efficient and less expensive. And the third is, and I say this as somebody who's been both a regulator and the head of a provider group and the head of a health plan, we have got to deal with a lot of the what I call the administrivia that people deal with now. The avalanche of regulations that have come in over the course of the past few years, much of which anybody in the provider world would tell you doesn't make the system any more effective or any more efficient, needs to be dealt with, because we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on paperwork and bureaucracy that I think a lot of people in healthcare would say doesn't really do much to make the system better. It just costs a lot.
Now, in the last minute or so we have left, what distinguishes you from the other Republican candidate in this primary, Mark Fisher?
I think the biggest difference is my experience. I've been a local official. I served on my Board of Selectmen in Swampscott. I served in 2 cabinet positions in a very successful administration back in the 1990s where we proved we could work on a bipartisan basis and work across the aisle with Democrats to get stuff done. We grew the economy. We cut taxes. We reformed welfare. We reformed health care. I mean, we got a lot of stuff done, and I've seen how to get that done, and I was part of the team that got it done. I also turned around Harvard Pilgrim. I had a great team, and I that was a we, not a me. but I know how to run a big organization, and I know how to make a big organization succeed, and I especially know how to make it customer-friendly and focused on customer service. And I think state government desperately needs a big dose of that. And finally, I can bring the independent check on the legislature, that two-party sort of constructive pushback that I think we need to make sure that the voters in Massachusetts get somebody in the corner office who's going to control spending, reduce taxes, and really focus on reforming state government and make it work for everybody.
And unfortunately, we are out of time. Charlie, thank you so much for talking to us here today. Happy
to do it, Laura, and I'm sure I'll see you around the campaign trail.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.